Hello super friends and welcome to DC TV Talk, and in today's episode we're going to be breaking down and reviewing Arrow Season 7 Episode 9, otherwise known as the first or the second part of the crossover, otherwise known as Elseworlds Part 2, so let's discuss. So I loved how this episode pretty much kicked off with our heroes immediately going to Gotham, because obviously Gotham was something that's been teased for this crossover ever since it was first announced, and going to Gotham, I have to say, I really enjoyed being in Gotham because it was a really nice change of scenery. And what I mean by that specifically is, obviously we have different cities in the Arrowverse. We have Star City, we have Central City, we have National City, you know, and each of them are different places, but they all feel extremely similar because they're all filmed in Vancouver. What made Gotham so different is that it was actually filmed in Chicago. So this was actually new location. This was actually a new place that we've never been to before in the Arrowverse, and I thought that was really exciting. Not only is it Gotham, but again, it just felt very different, and I really appreciated that, especially as somebody who obviously watches a lot of these shows and, you know, watches them on a very regular basis. You know, I live a lot in these cities, so to be somewhere different felt really nice, and obviously it was a cool little tidbit as well, because the Chicago was actually where the Dark Knight trilogy was filmed, so it's doubled as Gotham before. So it was just really nice to be in Gotham, and I love all the references to it as well. I love the fact that, you know, it's very much just a grimy place. You know, even Stephen Amell, you know, he makes a comment on it saying, you know, the crime here is just so poor, nobody talks about Gotham, nobody wants to be here, it's hell. And I thought that was really good. I think they really did a great job of, you know, really visualizing Gotham for the audience. Now, while our main heroes are off in Gotham, we did have this little cool opening at the start with a bunch of Argus agents going after Kane Wolfman, otherwise known as Joe Wilson, and we see him as Deathstroke, in Slade's actual suit, actually going up against these Argus agents, and this was really cool. Like, I've been waiting for Kane Wolfman to return because I think he's an awesome character. I loved him last season on Arrow, so to see him come back actually as Deathstroke was really interesting. You get to hear the Deathstroke theme from Blake Neely as well, which was awesome. My only problem with this, although it's awesome to see and I loved it, the only problem with this is I feel like Joe Wilson had such a big story on Arrow, like, to come. I felt like, you know, he really could have been a bigger player, but, you know, in this crossover, he gets arrested at the end of this little opening scene, and I find that really upsetting because I really wanted to see more with Joe Wilson, but I don't think we're going to get it, as he's just kind of gone. And this is kind of a problem that the crossovers often do, is they kind of just have like a cool opening scene for fans to get excited about, even though it technically doesn't make sense. Like, I remember at the beginning of Crisis on Earth X, like, Flash was fighting King Shark, even though last time we saw King Shark, he was locked up in an Argus facility. So, you know, you kind of have little things like that, and that was basically what this was, but it was still really cool to see Kane Wolfman, you know, Joe Wilson as Deathstroke. It was pretty sick. Now, just to get this out of the way, Felicity is in this episode, and there is a bit of Olicity drama going on. Obviously, there was a bit of Olicity drama going on at the end of episode 8 of Arrow, and in this, it's kind of resolved, but we kind of have this moment where they don't actually tell Felicity at first that Oliver and Barry are body swapped, and you know this is just going to be a terrible idea, so you're just kind of waiting for it to all happen, and eventually, yeah, she's like, oh, this is just another one of Oliver's excuses, blah, 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 blah. That line broke me, because I was like, no, Felicity, this is literally what you were in Season 4, don't do this, this is literally what you did in the Season 4 crossover, do not do this. But luckily it doesn't go on too long. Luckily, Caitlin does actually come in and is like, well, to be fair, when Oliver and Barry came to us first, we didn't actually believe them and we locked them up in the pipeline, so don't really, you know, he didn't give you that half bad of a time for it. So, you know, it is kind of resolved, and, you know, her and Oliver do kiss at the end, and that's all well and good, that's all fine. I wonder if this is going to actually play on in episode 10, if we're going to see that carry on in Arrow this season, but, you know, it was fine. It was just, they needed some drama, I suppose, and this is what they went with. I just think it could have been handled a bit better. Now, of course, going to Gotham, we knew we were going to get introduced to Ruby Rose as Kate Kane, aka Batwoman, and we do have that. So I'm going to start off with Kate Kane. Now, Kate Kane was a weird character for me. Obviously, I'm just going to say it straight off the bat, just in case you're all wondering. Obviously, my opinion on Ruby Rose has been very vocalized over the you know, passage of time since her casting. I thought she was really poor in this episode. I thought she was really weak. And I hate to say it, I was really open for Ruby Rose to surprise me. And I know some people will probably say to me, oh, well, you went in wanting to hate her. But that's not the case. I really wanted her to surprise me. I really wanted to love this version of Batwoman, because obviously we're going to be getting a new spin-off series with her. So I want to love her so I can get invested in her show. But in this episode, I just didn't. I thought she was really weak. Also, her character didn't make much sense to me, because she's living inside of, you know, Wayne Enterprises building. Bruce Wayne moved out 3 years ago. Also, that's another problem, which I'll get to. But, you know, she's kind of renovating this building to turn it into, like, this real estate thing. And then but it's just completely covered in vines. Like, how long have you been doing this? Like, it's just, I don't know. Kate Kane was a bit weird to me. I didn't really like her all that much. I didn't think she was that likable as a character. Batwoman, however, different story. I think Batwoman actually, you know, the suit is incredible. The suit looks fantastic. She definitely has the physicality. Batwoman is badass in this episode. I really liked Batwoman. I think Kate Kane is more of the problem and Ruby Rose. Because to be honest, you could have anybody under that suit and it wouldn't make a difference. Because, like I say, Batwoman, as in the actual alter ego, I think is great in this. It's just Kate Kane and Ruby Rose was so poor and so weak to me. It really put me off the character. And I found her generally unlikable. And going back to Bruce Wayne, like, Bruce Wayne gets name dropped quite a lot of times in this episode, and they say he left Gotham, you know, he kind of got basically scared and ran out of Gotham, which I just don't buy that. Like, that's so out of character for Bruce Wayne. He would never abandon Gotham due to the crime rate. I'm sorry, I don't buy that. And I know some people will probably say, oh, well, it's a coincidence, you know, he's probably gone off and trained somewhere, he'll probably come back at some point. But given that that's the information they provided us with, that's what they've officially told us, I don't buy that at all. Now, given the fact that we are in Arkham Asylum, or we're in Gotham, sorry, we do go to Arkham Asylum, we go to find Dr. John Deegan, and he does kind of let out all the prisoners. Now, we do get some really cool Easter eggs, you do get some really awesome Batman Easter eggs in here, which is nice, but again, I kind of have a lot of problems with this, but I will start off with the positives. For one, Diggle gets a really awesome fight scene in this, like a really awesome fight scene, like it's pretty much like a one-take fight. It's awesome, where he takes on loads of prisoners at once. I love that. Diggle doesn't really get a lot of awesome moments these days, so it was nice for him to get that here in the crossover. I really like that. But then there were some other stuff as well that happened in this episode, like, or in this particular scene, because we do have, like, Bob Fraser is in this, and he shows up as Psycho Pirate. Now, Psycho Pirate is a big character from the comics. He's a big player when it comes to Crisis on Infinite Earths. And it was a big deal when he was cast. Like, they had a whole press release. They were like, oh, we've cast Psycho Pirate. This is a big thing. He's barely in this episode. He does absolutely nothing. He puts on the mask in frame, and then that's pretty much it. And then he gets taken out by Batwoman. So, what was the point of having Psycho Pirate in this? That literally could have been any other guy. Like, why is Psycho Pirate such a big deal? And unless they're going to bring him back later on in Crisis on Infinite Earths, like in the next crossover, if that's what they're going to do, I don't see the point of actually having Psycho Pirate in this. It just made no sense to me. And also, another character they introduced in this was Nora Freeze, played by Stephen Amell's wife, Cassandra Jean Amell, and she was also completely wasted in this episode. I don't really understand what her point was either. You don't really learn anything about her. Apparently she's a prisoner at Arkham. That's never been a thing. I don't really understand why they made that particular choice. And she does have a cool little scuffle with Killer Frost, but it just, again, I don't really see the point of her character being in this. I found it very, very distracting that both of these two characters were very hyped up and just had absolutely nothing to do in this episode. Now, one of the coolest moments in this Arkham sort of story, though, is we do have Jonathan Crane, who is, of course, the Scarecrow. We do have his fear gas basically go into the bloodstream of Oliver and Barry, and they have to fight their ultimate nemesis. So we actually have Stephen Amell as the Flash fighting Tom Cavanaugh as Eobard Thawne, the Reverse Flash, and then we have Grant Gustin as Barry Allen, the Green Arrow, fighting John Barrowman as Malcolm Merlyn. So we do have John Barrowman, we do have Malcolm Merlyn and Reverse Flash both return. We knew Reverse Flash was coming back in this crossover in some way because he was in the trailer, but I didn't expect it to be this. And then also seeing Malcolm Merlyn return was awesome. I love John Barrowman, I love Malcolm Merlyn, so any chance that he can return is really, really awesome, but I'll get back to him in a second. My only problem with this, and this isn't even a problem, this is just a personal preference, I feel like for, instead of Malcolm Merlyn, maybe they should have done Prometheus, they should have done Adrian Chase. I know I'm a fanboy of Prometheus, but I just feel like Oliver would be a lot more scared, or even, Barry in this case, would have been a lot more scared with Prometheus coming back than Malcolm Merlyn. I think Prometheus is a lot more of a scary character than Malcolm Merlyn, because Malcolm Merlyn's come back loads of times. Oliver at this point is probably just waiting for Malcolm to come back at this point, so I don't really feel like he'd be surprised if he came back, so I feel like it would have been a lot better if they would have gone with him, or maybe even Slade. I just think it would have been so much better if they would have gone with either Slade, or more particularly, in my opinion, Prometheus. Now, throughout this episode, the 90's Flash, who's of course played by John Wesley Shipp, is trying to break through to Earth 1, and we do actually see him break through eventually, and he does come through. And again, I take umbrage with this because the 90's Flash is completely wasted in this episode. He comes in, gives some exposition about the Monitor. Now, what is really cool about this is that he does actually say, there's a crisis coming. He's testing Earths. He's coming through, there's something bigger coming. And he does, give this exposition, which is cool. And then he does go out with the heroes to face the Monitor. And then the Monitor just, literally clicks him away. I don't even know what he does to him. He just makes him disappear. So, yeah, 90's Flash is literally in this for, 5 minutes. Maybe if that. And I think that's really disappointing, again, because they really hyped up the 90's Flash, and he's barely in this episode. But the Monitor is basically saying in this scene, you know, he is testing Earths. There's a bigger threat coming. I need to see, you know, who's going to survive this. And he's saying that Earth 1's probably been one of the better contenders. So, you know, I think this is definitely a setup. They're heavily setting up Crisis on Infinite Earths here. And that's clearly what they're doing. And they're obviously trying to, I think, you know, they're going to try and merge all the Earths, which means Supergirl could be on Earth Prime. But, you know, I find it a bit strange that the 90's Flash was wasted in this way, but I guess he kind of served a plot function, but then that's also a negative in its own right. Now, the Monitor then goes back to John Deegan and says, right, you need to think bigger, do something bigger. You've basically created a fantasy, do it your own way now. And I think that that's basically what he goes and does. Basically, this is how Oliver and Barry become the Trigger Twins. Now, we do see them wake up. They literally just snap straight into this reality. There's no kind of waking up process. They literally just snap straight into the Trigger Twins. And they are like the most wanted criminals in Central City. Now, this is quite cool. I am excited to see what they do with this storyline, especially because we know that Cisco is involved. We know that James Olsen is involved. I think this is really awesome. And then we have the 3 cops show up, which is amazing. We do have Malcolm Merlyn, Kane Wolfman, and Ricardo Diaz all show up as cops. I love this. I think this is incredible. I wish they maybe would have had a bigger role, to be honest, because I love that, but I guess we'll just have to take what I can get. But it was really cool to have these and the Trigger Twins. They do go off, though, and we do get faced with the Black Suit Superman, and obviously the Black Suit Superman is going to be kind of like the main villain for the final part of this crossover, and he's basically coming after the Trigger Twins. So that's how this episode ends, with Black Suit Superman, and that's going to continue into the part 3 of this crossover on Supergirl. So overall, I feel like the Arrow episode, this middle episode of the Elseworlds crossover, is a bit up and down. It's a little bit messy for me. I enjoyed it. You know, I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy watching it. Of course I enjoy watching it. I always enjoy watching these crossovers, but I feel like, you know, the introduction of Batwoman, it left a lot to be desired, and I think it wasted so many characters, such as the 90's Flash, and it wasted Psycho Pirate, and it also wasted Nora Freeze. I think there's just so many elements that they could have played on, and I feel like what this episode really did, above all else, was try to push the references above actual story. Like, this episode just felt like it was just reference after Easter egg after reference after Easter egg, and granted, that's what this is for. I mean, these crossovers, they're for the fans, and, you know, these little things are for us fans to really pick up upon, but when it's sacrificing the story, I feel like it is kind of, and it's just, you know, making things feel like fluff. I feel like it is kind of a sacrifice that maybe is not worth making, and even though, like I say, I enjoy watching this episode, I enjoyed it, it's definitely not bad or anything like that. I just think, you know, in comparison to the first part of this crossover, it kind of came up short. So thank you guys for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like, it'll help me out a lot, and share this video with anyone and everyone you know who loves DC TV and get them to join the community. And as always guys, please subscribe for all of your latest content on Supergirl, The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, and Arrow. And with all that said guys, I hope to see you again in my next video.